All right, today we're jumping into the absolutely epic history of the continent of Tritony. It's a massive story about power, big ideas, and this constant recurring struggle to try and build a better world.
So, let's set the scene. Our story unfolds on the world of Equa, but we're going to zoom in on one continent, Tritony. And for as long as anyone can remember, the story of Tritony has been, well, a pretty violent one. It's been defined by this repeating cycle of conquest, one empire falling, another one rising from its ashes.
You see, to really get a handle on the political mess that is Tritony today, we've got to go back. I mean, way, way back, to the ancient past, and look at the core problem that's been plaguing this continent forever.
Way back when, the world was dominated by what historians call the Great Empires. And trust me, they weren't great in a good way. The formula was simple and brutal. They'd rise up through conquest, get totally corrupted by their own power, and then, boom, get conquered by the next big thing, who just start the whole bloody cycle all over again.
But then, something different happened. An empire came along that actually dared to break that mold. It was built on a totally revolutionary idea, dreamed up by a leader who saw the cycle up close, and basically said, you know what, no more. And that leader was a near-immortal named Echion. He had been part of this other cruel empire, Rokar, and he was just disgusted by it all. So he came up with a new philosophy, something he called sanctuary. The idea was radical for its time: freedom, kindness, and actually standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. And on the back of that one idea, the Empire of Irisol was born. It became this massive continental power. And honestly, it was the closest thing to a paradise this world had ever seen. It was a genuine golden age that lasted for centuries.
But, as we all know, even the best of times have to end. And the fall of Irisol, well, it was just as shocking and fast as its rise was hopeful.
And here's the absolute kicker. Irisol didn't fall to some invading army. No, it was an inside job. In a stunning act of betrayal, their most trusted allies, the forest-dwelling Lorians, turned on them. The war was catastrophic. It just shattered the empire. But it wasn't over. A desperate Echion unleashed one final, terrifying weapon: cursed seeds that would change the very face of the continent forever.
From that final, blood-soaked battlefield, a monstrous, cursed forest sprouted into existence, the Shadow Forest, a place so twisted that nobody dares go inside. At the same time, the Lorien homeland itself became this diseased, toxic wasteland we now just called the Lost Lands. The whole continent was scarred, inside and out.
And with Irisol's beautiful dream of sanctuary completely crushed, that old, violent cycle of empires came roaring back to Tritony. And this time, it was with a vengeance. So first, what was left of Irisol out west pulled itself together and formed the Empire of Far Ire. They declared a second manifest, basically a promise to reclaim their old glory through pure military power. But they got too big for their britches, stretched themselves thin, and were eventually conquered from within by the incredibly cruel and sneaky empire of Gambria.
Gambria's whole philosophy was control through fear, and they perfected it with something they called the Trail of Lament. It was this absolutely horrifying ritual where they'd force prisoners to march into the toxic Lost Lands on a completely hopeless search for magical lore stones. It wasn't really about the stones, it was a death sentence, guaranteeing a slow, miserable end from the Lorien sickness.
But when you push people that far, with that much cruelty, eventually someone is going to push back. And one man's refusal to be a part of the Trail of Lament would yet again change the course of history for everyone.
Meet Sanders Zura. He was a brilliant naval captain for Gambria, totally loyal, up to a point. When he got the order to ship prisoners for the trail, he just said no. He and his entire crew went rogue. He became a legend, a symbol of hope, earning the nickname Trailbreaker as he led a full-on rebellion against the Empire's tyranny. And the result of that one man's defiance? It was huge. Sanders' rebellion snowballed into a massive civil war that shattered the Gambrian Empire's grip on power and led directly to the creation of a brand new, independent nation, the Kingdom of Southland.
So, after all that history, all the rising and falling, the betrayals and rebellions, the continent of Tritony is, to put it mildly, a fractured mess. Today, it's this incredibly complex patchwork of competing nations, and every single one of them is a product of the empires that came before. So let's do a quick flyby of the modern map. First up, you've got what's left of the Empire of Gambria.
After that civil war, they're really just a shadow of their former selves, pushed back to their own heartland and in a state of pretty rapid decline.
Over in the west, rising from the ashes of old Far Ire, you've got the new kingdom of Ferosa. They're ambitious, dreaming of their own golden age, and they're calling for a third manifest, a mission to reclaim all those lost eastern lands. You can kind of see the cycle trying to start all over again, can't you?
Down south, Sander Trailbreaker's legacy is alive and well. The Kingdom of Southland is a major player, especially at sea, and they have really strong ties with all the independent island nations to the south.
Now, the Northwest, that's a whole different beast. It's a collection of fiercely independent city-states, like the seafaring Leavenport and the super-rich Gillingston. They're always squabbling with each other, but they all agree on one thing. They will never, ever be part of some bigger kingdom.
And then there's the East. Cut off from the rest of the continent by that massive, cursed shadow forest, it's still a land of total mystery. It's home to these strange, enigmatic people called Stonemen and various nomadic tribes, all living in the shadow of the haunting ruins of the once great empire of Irisol.
So, the stage is set. You've got new kingdoms on the rise, old empires crumbling, ancient grudges, and the echoes of a brutal history everywhere you look. It all boils down to one huge question for the future of this world. Can they finally break the cycle? Or is Tritoni just doomed to repeat its own violent history over and over again?